Return to Fire, narrated by Kish. Part 1, Resurrection. Chapter 1. My funeral was held on a Saturday. That way, all my family and friends could attend. It was a decent service, minus the fact that my mother was sobbing uncontrollably throughout, and my father sat stock still as a statue. I was there too, pissed because of the irritating killjoy seated next to me, mockingly wearing black. "Do you have to be here?" I whispered hotly to the frigging 6'7" tall demon, who seemed to be thoroughly enjoying himself. "Mm-hmm," Katsy murmured absently, ogling my cousin Chloe's backside as she bent over my coffin, tears streaming down her face. Katsy was a chaos demon, with a quarter of incubus thrown in somewhere, so for him to have the day off from hell and come topside to a funeral was like a spring breaker headed to South Beach. Good sights, good eats. Unfortunately, he also happened to be my new husband. I sighed for like the 12th time. "Please, Katsy, this is a really personal moment for me. Can you just leave so that I can spend it with the people that mean the most to me?" Begging could sometimes work, if you were dealing with one of the kind-hearted guys from the second level. Finally tearing his eyes away from Chloe, he glanced down at me and cocked his head quizzically. "You, of all people, don't have personal moments anymore. And that's not why we're here." And I'd forgotten that Katsy had graduated to a 4th level demon last summer. Not to mention the glaring fact that he had cheated on me during our wedding night not so long ago. No compassion there at all. As the choir sung, all decked out in their gold robes with emerald green stoles, I continued scanning the crowd. It wasn't just a morbid curiosity that had brought me and a surly, sexy demon back from the realm of hell to my funeral. It was revenge. Grateful that the crowd gathered at the graveside couldn't hear our terse conversation or see the furious look that I knew had just rolled over my face, I stood and stomped over to inspect my body. Again. Why not? Looks had gotten me into this mess. I should enjoy them. Even in death, my pouty lips seemed to have a seductive quirk. Standing just a few inches away, I could appreciate the smoothness of my skin, velour as expensive cedarwood. Framing my face were the long, thick brown curls that someone had so kindly styled in my favorite twist-out hairstyle. Full eyes that had closed, never to open again, to reveal the brown velvet irises that I had begged so hard for, the same ones that had a small twinkle in them that defied logic and human understanding. It had only been 2 years ago that I had sold my soul, literally, for eternal beauty on earth, figuring that I still had high school days, college days, and a real-life grown-up career to enjoy before I would have to pay my due. All to catch the eye of Aaron Akins. No complaints there. I had caught his eye and gotten laid for the first time and several times after that over the 2 years that Aaron and I were together. Just dying at 18 had really effed up my plans. Next to me, a woman sniffled onto the wreath on top of my coffin, and I turned, ready to tell her off, already forgetting that Katsy and I were super invisible. Reaching out to move her along, I scowled as my fingers passed right through her blouse. Because, of course, I wasn't physically back in the human realm yet. That would come in a few hours. Since time down below worked differently than in the human realm, I had already lived in hell for 6 months. Here, in the real world, only about 3 days had passed, which was how I managed to attend my funeral complete with a demon hubby in tow. Morosely, I watched as 2 of my cousins did alternating scripture readings. Chloe, as she dabbed her eyes with a crumpled handkerchief, murmured to a family member seated next to her. "Where's Shayna?" I wondered aloud. Searching the faces, my frown grew as I searched for my sister. Then I spotted her, way in the back row of seats, red-eyed and looking as if she was barely holding it together. My sister was holding up well, not crying in public, but I had an unfair advantage of spying and had already seen her vomiting all morning before my family left to come to the service. Moving toward my little sister, I decided to watch the service from her side. There wasn't anything I could do for her now, but at least we could have these last moments together. The chaos demon would wait. We couldn't do anything until the service finished. And besides that, he was having a better time than he would be having in hell at the moment. As the service proceeded, I scanned the crowd to see who else had showed. Family, friends. Even my cheating ass ex Aaron was there, looking somber. It was because of him that I was in this predicament. The person I needed, Ryan Nichols, sat up front with the other pallbearers. How'd he get that gig? I wondered. Ryan was stone-faced, and other than when he carried my coffin in and out, he sat still. But it surprised me to see him place a calla lily in my casket before it was closed. It was my favorite flower. I was shocked that he even knew that. Ryan was mostly happy-go-lucky partying, so I never thought he could be sentimental. A pang struck as I thought of all the times he'd asked me out, insisting that Aaron wasn't the man for me. Guess he was right. The funeral was held in the yard behind my former church. Everything was open air, and the sky buzzed with the sound of birds and rustling trees. It was a sad event, but for me, viewing from the outside, the scene was strangely beautiful. Even Katsy, lurking in the back row of seats, waiting for me so that we could finish the next part of my request, didn't ruin the serenity of the moment. I should be here and alive, I thought, as I moved around to stand in front of each and every person to see if anyone could actually see me, if even just a little bit. No one could. Not one person. I was a ghost, and I was standing amongst my family and friends at my own funeral. But all the searching I did at the service pointed out one horrible, glaring fact that hurt almost as bad as realizing that my friends had betrayed me. Della hadn't come to my funeral. My best friend in the entire world, the one who had stolen my man on the same night that I had died, hadn't shown. It was an admission of guilt like no other. The funeral was over, had been for hours, and yet I'd sat there in the noonday sun, then in the fading afternoon light, and into the hours of the night as the day had stolen by, lost in thought. It was one of my friends I knew, but it was all I knew. We were still in the cemetery, but in the demon realm. The demon realm could overlap the same places as the human realm, and at the same time, not occupy the same space. It was how I had attended my funeral, but had been unable to touch anything. Until I was fully in the human realm, I wouldn't be able to touch anything or anyone there, and that's what I needed to do. Moonlight sliced across my face, and I shivered at the chill in the air, not because I was cold, but just because I could sense it, and that sort of thing was still instinctive, even though I was dead. Do you want some time to reflect on the day or anything? Katsy stepped onto the concrete mausoleum next to me. Who knew whether he was being sarcastic or not? Sometimes with demons, he couldn't tell. His handsome face was somber, devoid of emotion. I took a moment to admire his beauty wistfully. The Styxy stubble running along his jaws and chin only highlighted his rugged looks. Careless brown hair pushed away from his face only enhanced the intensity of his black eyes. The internal power that wafted from his long, lean body was intoxicating, as was the fact that he was a fourth-level demon, capable of almost anything in the demon world. And he was currently mine, to touch as I wanted, only I didn't dare. I couldn't let myself fall under his spell. No, I shook my head. Just get it over with. He touched my hand lightly, indicating that I needed to turn to him, and I did, reluctantly. Our ruling demon in hell, the youngest of the 7 princes, Tevet, had allowed me the chance to live again. In truth, I had begged for the chance to return to earth and not enter hell as yet. For many reasons, but one glaring reason stood out. One of my friends had killed me, and I needed to know who, so that I could bring them to justice hell style. The scent of tea berry wafted up to my nose, and looking down, I discovered that Katse had already spread the herbs around the platform. As I watched, he sprinkled a handful of neem seeds over it all. Then he extended his hand to me. Placing my hand in his warm grip, I stared at the uncontrollable shaking of my hand with his, my brown against his paler skin. Why was I shaking? This was a part of every major hell ceremony, and there was none more major than raising a soul from the hell realm to earth. Plus, Katse and I were wedded as demons, which was why he had been chosen to travel with me today, instead of some other more experienced demons. His touch was about 15 degrees hotter than a human's, and it reminded me of what I needed to do and why. I wasn't human anymore, and the only way that I could get closure and be able to move on was through this ceremony. I climbed up onto the top of the cold concrete of my tomb, grateful for the cushion of tea berry. My timing was perfect. As my butt hit the slab, the moon rose directly in the center of the sky, bathing me in light. With a simple flick of his wrist, he rose from the platform and Katse joined me on the slab. After staring in my eyes with an indeterminable expression, Katse lowered his mouth to my trembling lips, drawing the lower one in, sucking gently. Hard, muscular arms folded themselves around my body, trapping me in place against him. And unbidden, waves of desire began to attack me from all angles, though I fought them as long and as hard as I could. Oh, why, Katse? I moaned to myself. Why had Tevet managed to pick the one demon in the realm that I want more than anything? Does he know my true feelings about him, though I've been hiding them like crazy? By now, the gentle pulling on my lip had graduated to a frenzied sucking, and my heart pounded as I kissed him back for real. Katse gripped my hips in an iron grip, quickly muttering the chant for the energy release ritual. Please, I whimpered. Let's not do this, I finished in my head, and he took that as a cue to bury his mouth in the crook of my neck, which guaranteed to bring a hickey of epic proportions. If only I still had blood. Oh, I sighed, and Katse did the same, rubbing the tip of his nose against mine briefly before kissing me again. Light slivered over us, creating dips and shadows of our melded bodies. Oh no, I moaned, and this is happening when I think he's an arrogant, self-centered jerk. Imagine if he wasn't. His tongue pierced me in one swallow and then left before plunging in again and again. Together we breathed in sync, and I knew I was his, even as my heart sank. I couldn't fall in love with him. Unbeknownst to Tevet, I had other plans for my return to Earth. I couldn't care less about finding my killer and bringing her, to justice. Whatever was done, was done. I was going after Ryan Nichols, the man I'd wanted and couldn't have. He could do one thing that Katse couldn't, make me human again. End of chapter 1.